When something has been true about you for 10, 15 years plus, your body doesn't just suddenly start believing the new words because you're saying them in the mirror. In this video, I'm going to explain why, if you have been in a certain identity for nearly 10 years or over, and you can't seem to step into the new identity, this might be why. In order to say this truthfully, I have to say a part of myself that I kind of don't speak about. I've touched on, the fact that I had autoimmune disease, the fact that I'm no longer ill. But the deeper part of all of that is something that I didn't realize until honestly last year. And it was the part that was keeping me stuck in the old self, the ill person. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Katarina. I am a transformation guide who works with astrology and shadow work to get you out of the old and into the new magnetic, raw, powerful self. If that sounds like that interests you, then please subscribe and turn your notifications on so you get a notification every time I post a video. I really appreciate you when you comment and like and share to someone who you might feel like needs to hear what I'm about to say today. When you have been living in an identity for so long, no amount of mirror work, affirmations, or even subconscious reprogramming is going to release that identity. Now, I want to say my lived experience first because it's something that is the missing piece to why I got to where I got to when it comes to astrology shadow work. And I do talk about it, but I don't talk about it that much. When I was 20 years old, I fell ill and I was in and out of hospital for about 6 years, having tests, scans, everything. They were trying to figure out what was wrong with me, but they also were telling me that it might be in my head. Even though they were telling me that my bloods are really abnormal, and there's obviously something, they couldn't understand or pinpoint what it was. And this was 16 years ago, so they didn't maybe have the knowledge that they have now about autoimmune diseases and women's health and all that stuff, even though I don't think it's changed drastically now, but still. Back then, they labeled people like me as people who make something up. I remember speaking to someone and they said there are people who are actually ill and then there are people who make up something like CFS. And I was just gobsmacked that I had paid money to sit down in front of someone who was a private doctor to tell me that. So there was a lot of pain. There was a lot of grief stored in my body from the 10 plus years that I was ill. Every day was affirming my reality. Let me explain that because this was actual lived experience, not a belief. This wasn't a belief that I thought I was ill when I wasn't. This was I was unable to walk. I couldn't make it up the stairs. When I did have the energy to be able to walk, I'd have to lean on something in order to be able to make it. I had myalgia in my legs and I was up every night and my legs were in excruciating pain. I was being sick, vomiting everywhere every time I was given medication. Every time I was given something, my body would come out in rashes. I was not believed by doctors. I was not believed by people in my life. It was not something they could see, so they couldn't understand it. So for 10 years of my life, I was proving to people that I was ill, but also hiding it because I didn't want them to think I was lazy. The only person who truly saw my illness was my mum. She was there through every step of the way, and she actually ended up studying and qualifying as a naturopathic nutritionist because of that. she wanted to understand what the body was going through and why it was doing what it was doing. So after the 6 years of giving up with the doctors, with the medical system, I just gave up. I couldn't be bothered anymore. I was tired of being told contradictions. I was tired of being told, oh, wow, that's really high. And then the next moment being told that I'm making stuff up. So I found a different route, which was a holistic route. I went to see every type of healer: naturopathic, Reiki, holistic, homeopath. I ended up spending like the last money that I had on this retreat that was absolutely awful, and made me hate my body even more after that. Because the thing is that for a very long time, I thought my body was failing me. I didn't think my body was trying to tell me something. I thought my body is failing me. I'm a failure. And that kept being repeated by the things that were happening on a daily basis. Anytime I felt like I was doing better, I would end up crashing the next day. Anytime I wanted to, I said this before, but I started so many businesses when I was ill. I've always been able to sew. My nan was a dressmaker and suit tailorer, so she taught me. And I made my own dresses and I sold them at Spitalfields Market, and I was making pastries and baking and selling them at a food market. I was doing so many things. I qualified in nutrition. I became a nutritional writer for online magazines. I was focusing a lot on trying to make money because I genuinely didn't have any. That I wasn't able to truly focus on my healing as much. It was there, and I did daily habits, and I was able to focus, but I was yo-yoing all the time. It was like 2 days solid sewing for Spitalfields Market, 2 days being at the market, then 3 days being in bed, and I would just repeat that cycle. And that was that was like 5 years in of being ill. The first 2-3 years I was unable to do anything. I was completely bedridden and I didn't know what was happening to my body, but I felt like I kept repeating this sentence: I feel like I'm 90 in a 21-year-old's body. This can't be right. So for me, it was like 10 years of being told by my body that I was still ill, being told that I couldn't do certain things. And after a while, I would say by the 8th or 9th year of being ill, I think that's like looking back, I think that's when I started to maybe be in freeze a response a little bit. Because I was so much better than what I was when I was so ill. Like I don't exaggerate when I say that I couldn't walk up the stairs from the age of 20 to about 24. I was severely ill during that time. And then 24 to like 28, I was able to implement things, but I would still have crashes. And it would just be like complete, like my eyes couldn't open and I just felt so exhausted. I wasn't able to do anything. And then after about 28, 29 years old, I started to feel much better, but it would go in phases. Like it would be like 2 weeks of feeling better and then a week of being like, and I wasn't able to push myself as much as I wanted to. That phase became stuck. I became stuck in this narrative of like, I can't test my capacity because if I test my capacity, I'll be ill. And that was my nervous system keeping me safe. My nervous system was keeping me in the pattern of like, if we do too much, you know what happens? We get ill. So let's not do too much. Let's not test our capacity. But for the whole of my 20s, for a lot of it, I was genuinely ill. And the reason I say all of this is because I think you really need to understand it's really important to know how long you have been in a certain identity for. A lot of manifestation coaches and a lot of healers, I think they do their work and they're really good at it, especially like healers, they're really good at it. But I think sometimes there's this lack of not understanding, but maybe awareness of when someone can't just do the affirmations and the mirror work because they actually have something stored in their body, because they've had continuous day by day, year by year confirmations of the old. And this isn't self inflicted, it was after a while, but for the first 4 to 8 years, it was actual illness. So for a very long time, I was the girl who was ill. That was who I was. Like, I couldn't change that. So when I started to do manifestation work and when I started to do subconscious reprogramming, there was a disconnect there because I was acting as if the only block was the fact that I wasn't earning money consistently, when really it was the fact that I had been living 8 years of consistently being proven to me that I was ill and therefore I couldn't earn money consistently. I was unable to get a full-time job, unable to get a part-time job. I was unable to stay consistent at my businesses because of my illness. So the consistency was not because I was lazy or I wasn't aligned or anything like that. It actually was not the root. The root was the illness. And I kept glazing past it, constantly forgetting about it, because I felt like I wasn't ill anymore. And this brings me to something that, if you watched last year, I did a eclipse season video where I said that I had so much unveiling. I had realized that my body was holding on to grief, and the grief is what was keeping me stuck. Because the thing is that I have done a lot of self-awareness for myself. I have read my chart. I've understood my chart from a psychological lens. I've done all the shadow work. Astrology-based shadow work genuinely has gotten me from where I was 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. I've been doing astrology shadow work for 4 years now, to now. I am not the same person as I was, truly. But there has been a block, and it's something that no amount of shadow work or no amount of therapy, which I have done all the modalities within therapeutic world, none of them were actually getting to the root. And the root was not more inner work and not more self-awareness. The root was actually my body was just holding on to the grief, even though I had mentally let it go. And this is what I want to speak about. This is not for you if you have not done any shadow work, if you have not gone to therapy, if you have not understood yourself from a psychological lens and work through your shadows. This isn't your part. You need to do the other stuff first. But this is when you can do it during. I'm not saying you can't, but you could release the grief from your body but still be acting in a certain way that solidifies your old self. My daily life looks like my new self. Like, I am my new self. I am my new identity. I live as her. This is me. But there was one part that was keeping me in this liminal space, and that was my body. My body was holding on to grief that I had consciously released. I do all these things, which I'll go into in a separate video, on how I helped release all of that. But I forgot the one key part, which was, yeah, my mind is releasing it, my subconscious reprogramming is working through it, but my body has not released that. So this is for you. If you are living as your new self, you feel like every day you wake up and you're creating the habits, you're cultivating the habits that align with your new self. You've done the shadow work, you've worked on yourself, you understand your shadows, you understand your loops and patterns and what keeps you stuck in that cycle. But something is just not clicking. Like, you're like, I still feel like I'm really in the liminal space. Why is that? That is where your body could be holding on to the trauma, and therefore your body is keeping you stuck in that liminal space. So, a little disclaimer before I go into these. First of all, I always don't I always like I don't speak openly about certain things that I believe in because I just feel like not everyone needs to hear your beliefs. But there's one thing that has genuinely been affirmed by my illness and what I went through, which is I do not need studies to tell me that something works. I don't need it. If it works for one person, that's it for me. It works. We don't negate someone else's experience just because it doesn't work for the masses. These things come from my own lived experience and they worked for me. If you do them and they don't work for you, that doesn't mean that you negate my experience. That just means that you've worked in a different way. And that's perfectly okay. But these aren't things, if you want to go to someone who has all the data for you, that's not me. I'm not that woman. And that is genuinely because I was ill for so long that I did all the data things. I did everything that all the doctors were telling me to do, and nothing was helping. And it wasn't until I moved towards a more holistic, more what they would say is alternative, but I actually think it's traditional medicine, is all the stuff that people would say it didn't work for everyone in the study, in the group. But to me, it worked. And for everyone around me that I saw that also were going through the same things as me, when I went to those spaces, it worked for them too. So there's one part of this which I've done, which is about releasing grief from my body. And then the other part is releasing shame. I wanted to speak about both because our bodies can hold on to them, especially as women, when it comes to shame. So when it comes to grief, the main thing that I do is somatic work. I look up on YouTube and I do trauma informed somatic work. I think that's what you call it. I think that's what I typed in. There's some that focus on different areas. So some were hips, some were like jaw tension. That is a lot of fascia release as well. And that's something that now has become intuitive. I don't follow a YouTube video, but at the beginning I did. I would just put on a YouTube video that was something to do with somatics and I would do it. Now, when I first started, I thought like my first time, I thought I was going to be shaking and crying during, and that didn't happen. And I thought, oh, it hasn't worked. Like, this didn't work. What? And as soon as I finished, I laid there for a little bit and then I sat up. And as soon as I sat up, I'm not even exaggerating, I cried so much. It was like unstoppable. I could not keep it in. And the one thing that I couldn't keep in was the sound of the crying. Now, we have been taught, especially as women, but men too, is to suppress our emotions, is to silence ourselves. So when you're crying and you're trying to keep quiet, you're just affirming that trauma, you're affirming that voice that says suppress yourself. So even though it will be uncomfortable, and trust me, it will, you need to cry loud. You need to let it out. You need to do what they do within my culture. They wail. When someone passes, they wail. And it's uncomfortable to hear, but it's actually extremely rooted because it releases it from your body. So when you're doing somatic work, and you might not cry the first time, it might take you 5 repetitions of doing somatic work in order for you to release those emotions. But when you do, just make sure that you are sounding the tears that are coming out. Do not keep it quiet because that just reaffirms that wound. The other part that is tied to this, and it is somatics, it's more of a fascia release, which is I have a foam roller and I put the foam roller like on my hip or something and I lay there, and it is uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie to you, it does hurt, but I've realized if I continually do that, even if it's for 5 minutes, I feel it releasing. And again, it is tears for me. That is what has happened. It is something that happens with my body. Like I just feel it. It's almost like it comes through my body and I can feel like the tears coming and I just let it go. Like I release it. I don't try and control my cry. I don't try and hold it in. I just release it and go. If you live with people, just like put on your music really loud or something like that and just do it. But don't suppress yourself, because that again reaffirms the wound. And the other thing, which is kind of shadow worky, but it's not so much, is we're so used to holding in our thoughts, holding in our fears, and holding in our grief. We're so used to keeping all these words inside and not releasing them. And we really underestimate the power and how therapeutic it is just to release the words out of your hands or out of your mouth. So, what I've done is I've written letters to every single person, every single part of me, every single grief that I've held that I didn't get in my 20s, everything that my body was holding on to, everything I just released into paper. And I wrote and wrote and wrote, and it just felt afterwards like I could scream. Like I just felt like I was free in the like most. I don't want that to be kind of like really romanticized or being like, oh, if I just write a letter then I'll feel free. You need to do all the other stuff too. I did, but the I really do believe that we underestimate how much we keep in and how much we don't say. And this is also fear. So just on a piece of paper, or honestly, you need to say it out loud because this one does better when you hear the words. Say the deepest fear, the thing that you fear the most, just say it out loud. And first of all, you'll realize actually that doesn't seem so scary when you say it out loud. But also, you say, okay, if that happens, then what? Okay, what kind of emotion does that bring out? Okay, fear. Okay, so what if I didn't focus on the fear, and what if I focused on the courage? What would I do that would be courageous right now in order to beat that fear? The last piece is just something that I just wanted to add on, because I do think that we don't say our fears out loud, and it gives them power when we don't say them out loud. It keeps it stuck in our bodies. The things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to shame. So there is a book called F Like a Goddess, and I can't remember the name of the author. It's there, but I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see the name. But I believe it starts with an R. I can't remember. In that book, she talks about writing down every intimate experience that you've had. And I did that years ago. I bought that book in 2021, I believe. So I did that experience then, and it showed up even then like a lot of wounds that were around that actually are mirrored in my charts, obviously. So I found that really interesting. But anyway, that book, she spoke about releasing and doing noises and making sure that you're like making sure that you're releasing it from your body. You lay on your back and you open your legs and you just keep them at that point, and your legs start to shake. That's a natural reaction. So she speaks about stuff, but mainly she speaks about that letter process, and I did that. But so I always did the stuff that was like the experiences and journaling about them and talking about them and going over them, but I really did not realize how much my body was keeping until I decided to do a yoni steam. And the yoni steam I did for superficial reasons. And I didn't really think anything of it. And I recommend you look in how to properly do a yoni steam if you were interested in it. I do think if you've got any issues down there, just make sure you consult a gynecologist or research it yourself before you go blindly into doing a yoni steam. But I did it on myself, and I got all the herbs and I got the little bowl thingy, and I sat. I didn't listen to any music. I genuinely didn't think this was going to be anything. And I was just sitting there, and in the space of 5 minutes, I just started crying so deeply. And this experience that I had came up in my head. And I realized that was my body, my yoni, my releasing that story, releasing that experience that I had. And I didn't realize until then how much my body was storing. And this is why I'm saying to you that you could do all of the shadow work, you could do all the reprogramming, honestly, you could do all the manifestation techniques. But if your body is holding on to something and it's not releasing that story, you have to release it. You have to work on releasing that from your body. And that's why I give you all these things, not because I'm saying them because someone wrote them down as things to do, but genuinely because they worked for me and they released things that I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. So that was my experience with that yoni steam. And I do a yoni steam every month now. And I have done for a long time because that experience that I had was just so it was not comfortable. I'm not even going to lie to you. That experience, sitting there and releasing that, I didn't want to go back into that experience that I had, and that just, it needed to happen. And the other thing, which again is something to do with the yoni, is a yoni egg. I have one that is rose quartz. I got it from Etsy. I got it from someone who makes sure that she gets certified crystals and all that stuff. And I would say this has helped me release the shame around that I have around receiving experiences, pleasure, joy, whatever, and specifically with intimacy, obviously, also just as like a woman, just in your natural realm of receiving and creating. I had such a wounded feminine and also toxic masculine view of creativity, and that if it wasn't making me money, then what's the point? Like, I could be doing something so much better with my hours if I didn't do that. And I was really not in my healed at all. And all these experiences, all these habits and tools that I use have helped me get out of that toxicity. It's helped me release the grief, and it's helped me release the shame. And I had so much shame, and it has really helped me genuinely. I just felt really called to speak about this, and I always am a bit I get like, my nervous system gets a bit tight when I speak about my illness, and I try and like regulate and push through, because like, that was part of my life for so long. It shaped my life for so long that a year of manifestation work or acting as her is not going to eradicate that. That is a long process of releasing the habits that you did when you were ill, or whether it's financial inconsistency for you, or you didn't have a home, or you went through a very traumatic experience and it was affirmed, or you lived with an abusive partner. All those things create a narrative, and they continue and continue and continue way after the experience is done. So please let me know down below if this resonated with you, and if you have anything to share. Like, I really want this to be a community. I'm even thinking about holding intimate spaces for women, and I really just want this to be something where we can share and release and evolve, and that's just something I genuinely am really passionate about. So thank you so much for watching, and if you have watched to the end of the video, then I would really appreciate you subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing to someone who you feel like might need to hear this. Until next week.